Again, we just want to talk about what it looks like to experience Sabbath and what it looks like to legitimately unplug from some of the crazy things that are happening in our lives. And this started all the way back in the book of Genesis and the Ten Commandments. We see that one of the Ten Commandments, number 3, is to remember the Sabbath and to keep it holy. And a lot of us follow most of the Ten Commandments, and we do really well, and maybe all the rest of them, maybe most of the rest of them. But this one is a real struggle, especially in American culture. Most of us are engaged in some sort of work, or maybe we're at school, and we are so wired for productivity and success and achievement and all of those kinds of rubrics and metrics that help us establish our own sense of self-worth. And I think from the very beginning, what God was trying to remind us is we were not created to be these ultra-productive beings and always be on the clock and always being measured against how fast we can produce and make something happen. But actually, we are created in the image of God, and even God rested on the 7th day after all of creation had been brought into existence. And a lot of us forget that, I think. And in response to, I think it's a real symptom of the fact that we struggle to live into the Sabbath, that in response to the third of the Ten Commandments, in the Old Testament there are 1,570 rules about how to keep the Sabbath holy. And I think that just goes to illustrate how hardwired we are for creating rules and systems and processes, that we even regulate what it looks like to take a day off. What we even try and define what that means, and this is what you can do, and this is what you can't do, and these are the things that are okay, and these are the things that aren't okay. But the Sabbath, I think, was all about taking time to reset your own internal clock, to reset your own internal values, and kind of retool and recalibrate and point the ship in the right direction. And hopefully that direction is in line with your values. And when Lindsay and I traveled this last summer, we had the opportunity to take a 2-week break and just really enjoyed our time. We got to spend it with family and with each other, and it was interesting. It took us about 3 days, I think, for us to kind of unplug and maybe set the phones to silent and put, you know, all of the things that were weighing on us at the churches that we serve totally to the side and just totally focus on one another and our family around us. But it took us about 3 days, you know, and that just goes to show you how difficult it is to get into a mind frame where you're totally focused on recovering yourself and rebuilding yourself. But a couple of really awesome things started to happen in the midst of that time that we spent together. We totally got the opportunity to look at one another and remember that we are the most important thing that we have, short of God, and to look each other in the eyes and to reaffirm our commitment to one another and making that one of our major priorities. But if you're so caught up in what it looks like to achieve in your workplace, if you're so caught up in what it looks like to be in whatever your maybe it's school or work or whatever it is that you're in the midst of right now, that I think you can lose your direction, you can lose your way. And I think from the very beginning, what the Sabbath was intended for was for us to latch on to that compass and to allow that to direct our lives so that we don't go through entire years of our lives and lose it and miss out on the opportunity to truly follow God wherever God's leading us. And I think the Sabbath is really important for that. We unplug and we disengage and we put our phones back in our pockets and we experience creation. We experience maybe something that we've been putting off for far too long. And that's what it's all about. So I don't know what your practices are around the Sabbath. I don't know what your life looks like, but one of the exercises that we did recently when I got together with a bunch of my clergy colleagues, young clergies, folks who are new to ministry, is we sat down and we wrote a couple of permission slips for ourselves. It was this great exercise where we gave ourselves permission to do certain things in the world, and maybe it's take a yoga class or a dance class. Maybe it's to know our own limitations and to accept the fact that we're not going to be perfect, to accept the fact that we don't have all the answers, whatever it is. But wherever you're at, I encourage you, whether you're watching this video here this Thursday or if you watch it on Sunday at some point, I encourage you to just pause for a moment and give yourselves maybe 3 to 5 permission slips that will allow you to legitimately take a Sabbath, to legitimately create space in your life, even if it's just a morning or an afternoon. I realize a lot of us don't feel like we can devote an entire day to rest and retool. But what are the things that you need to write yourself a permission slip for? Is it simply to acknowledge that you can't fix everything? Is it to acknowledge that you've been struggling with one area of your life or another? Is it to acknowledge that you're not going to be the student that you want to be? That you're just never going to drive those straight 4-point grade point averages? What is the permission slip you need to write in your life? And how can your Sabbath practice take a part in that? How can your practice of taking the Sabbath, feed into your ability to be a healthy, unanxious presence in the rest of your life? Because the Sabbath is all about rejuvenating us. And if you're not taking time for yourself, I just really believe that your relationship with God and your relationship with your neighbors are going to struggle just a little bit, because you're not taking those moments to breathe deeply and to fully engage in what God has in store for your life.